Welcome to Glitch Cube, we're a gaming podcast, and each week we take a deeper look into the art of video games. I'm Christian.
And I'm Chris.
And before we get into today's topic, why don't we go over what you've been playing this week? What's on your radar?
Well, first off, this isn't something I'm playing, but something I read. It looks like this kind of news just got out today. Looks like, but I guess Square Enix filed trademarks for a couple titles.
Really?
And the first one is Ever Crisis. The second one is The First Soldier. And they also trademarked the Shinra Electric Power Company logo.
Really? That's funny.
So, and it's all related, obviously, to 7. So,
that's hilarious. So
I'm curious.
I wonder how many people have been making just like bootleg merchandise off of their stuff.
I mean, not just that, but think about how, like, the First Soldier, it could be Sephiroth, so they might be making a game just on him.
Oh, yeah, huh? Well, they kind of did that, right? Well, Crisis Core had him more as a main character. Like, he really got to know Sephiroth. But it would be cool to actually play as him, like maybe his side of the story.
Yeah, it'd be really cool to play as him.
Yeah.
And then, Ever Crisis are probably playing that whole Crisis Core theme, too.
Yeah, because that was actually a really good game. And, like, bringing in those characters, like Zack and all that, that's a whole nother, like, there's prequel possibilities for HD remakes and everything there, so that would be
I've never got to play any of those PSP games, regretfully. Like, I played them, like, at a friend's house, but I never got to actually dive into the story. So seeing this, it makes me really want to at least play Crisis Core, just because I've heard, like, how it's actually kind of fun.
Yeah, it's good. The gameplay is really simple, but it's actually really fun. Definitely recommend that one.
So for games I've been playing, honestly, there's only really been 2. The second one kind of ties into what we're going to be talking about today. So I'll start off with the one that's kind of a surpriser for me.
Okay.
Since, we were talking about wanting to play Minecraft together, I started playing it.
Nice.
And my wife was someone who despised Minecraft for a long time. She thought it was for children. She thought it was like adult Legos. And she thought the graphics looked dumb, right? And I was like, hey, like,
yeah.
And it's like, she's really big on survival building games, right? Like Raft and Don't Starve, stuff like that. And I was like, with Minecraft, you kind of have like all these options to just go buck wild. And she's like, nah, I don't want to do it. So I updated the graphics on my game. I think it's like BSL shaders, and the game looks great. Like, it's beautiful. It doesn't tank my frame rates at all. It's nice. And I'm like, hey, like, you could get yours to look like this and we could build. And she's like, oh, I'll just try it out. So she tries it without the graphics first. And she's like, oh, this is kind of fun. It's kind of basic. I put the graphics on there. She gets more into it. And that first hour where she was like, I don't know, this is kind of, there's not a whole lot, turns into 6 hours. And, another 3 hours later, and we've already built our first tower and getting lost. And it's, oh man, the past like couple days have just been like nonstop playing. Like, she's fully sucked into it, which is cool. It's cool seeing like her getting really creative with it and having fun. And it's cool building. Because for me, to actually play Minecraft, I haven't played since it came up for the 360.
Oh, wow.
So like more than 10 years ago, it feels like. So seeing all these updates like villagers and even like basic combat stuff just feels so different now. And I'm like, wow, this game is really cool. And I'm playing unmodded aside from graphic mods. So I haven't been able to experience the craziness of some of these mods that I'm looking at, but it's a lot of fun. I didn't realize I'd be enjoying building this kind of stuff, and I'm in the mood of building towns, and it's fun having all that customization
Nice.
thrown at me.
Yeah, Minecraft is crazy. It's one of those games that I can watch endless hours of it. But have I played it? To be honest, I have not. So it's kind of funny. Like I've watched like yesterday, I think I watched like a 3 hour stream of it, but it wasn't even a stream. It was a recording of a stream on YouTube. I was watching Jack Patillo play Septec Ages because that mod pack is insane. But it's just funny. Like I've never actually played it. Like, I mean, I played like an hour or two here and there, and I picked it up like once or twice thinking I can get into it, but I just never fully like really got into the game. And now lately, after we started talking about it and doing a little bit more research on the mod packs and really looking into them, it sounds super exciting, and I definitely want to check that game out and set up, you know, some videos for you guys to watch and all that. Like, I think it'd be really fun to branch out in that direction.
Yeah, as relaxing as it is, it's kind of entertaining to watch. So it's weird. It's kind of weird how you can watch some people if you just want to find some zen, and you can find other people to like be hyped up. It's interesting how it can play different roles for different things.
Yeah, like if you watch the Achievement Hunter feeds of it, like it's all crazy, all hyper. They're doing everything all chaotic, and it's super fun. And then you watch some of these streamers that are just real like mellow and chill with it. It's like gamer meditation in a way.
It really is. And the music too. Like the music's really good, surprisingly.
Yeah. Yeah. And like the background noises are really well done. Like there's a lot to this. Like, you know, graphically aside, with the base graphics, of course, it just, you know, it doesn't look huge, like amazing, but there's a lot of depth to this game that I just didn't realize it. I was completely ignorant to it. And I feel like I would have really enjoyed this game when it first came out if I really gave it the chance. And hopefully we can get into it so we can do it now.
Yeah, I think for this year we'll plan something. Yeah. We'll do some videos on it together.
Yeah, I think so. So be on the lookout. You heard it. We talked about it, so now we gotta do it.
Oh yeah, breaking news.
That's right.
For number 2, since the PS5 gives you like the PS Plus collection, right? So it's a bunch of like free games. I started playing Days Gone.
Oh, nice.
And I remember when this came out, people downplayed it a lot, saying, "Oh, this sucks. Like, it's not like what the trailers made it seem." Because I remember when it was announced, people were like, "Oh my god, look at it. It's like 100 zombies everywhere. Like, it's chaotic and stuff like that." It came out and everyone's like, "Well, this is kind of a bummer," and then it just died. Yeah. Like, you heard some people who played it like really enjoyed it, but everyone else was like canceling this game. I was still always interested in it, but I didn't want to pay the full price for it because I'm not really into zombie games or zombie stuff in general. This game's a lot of fun. It's open world in a different way. It feels like with a lot of open world games, you get stuff thrown at you, right? Like, I mean, the last game I played, Immortals Phoenix Rising, you get to one of those tall towers, you look and you can spot like all the collectibles you can get, all the shrines to do, you know, typical Ubisoft, right? Like Assassin's Creed kind of stuff. This game, like, you have your camp, you have your radio tower, and then all around the map, like, there's maybe one spot where it's like, here's an infestation that you can clear. And then your next mission point, and that's it. Like, it's not like things really pop up for you. When you're at these, like, little radio towers, sometimes you can find a map, and the only things it really shows are, like, historic monuments, because it takes place in Oregon. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. It takes place in a forest, kind of.
Okay.
And you go to these sites, but that's really it. Like, it's not like they're throwing quest lines at you. They're not making you find stupid stuff. Like, right now, the only dumb one is, like, you got to find meat for the camp, which kind of sucks because hunting is kind of annoying in it. Since you have a loud gun, zombies come at you, and Yeah. But it's really cool. I don't know. Like the story, I'm kind of like, whatever. Like it's not pulling me in yet.
It's a zombie game,
but
you're not there for story, right? Like they don't put
yeah.
all the focus into that.
But being immersed, like getting lost in this forest, it's kind of like, whoa, like your bike has a gas tank that if you run out, your bike stops and you have to go somewhere and find gas and fill it back up.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you can fast travel somewhere and your bike goes with you and you're out of gas. Like you need gas in this game. And it's just gritty. Like if you take on a zombie, like and your weapon breaks, you're just using your knife and it's like, it's going to take like 15 hits with this damn thing in order to kill a zombie, but it just feels so realistic.
Right.
And coming from a Ubisoft game to this, you see such a drastic change in like views of open world. And it's bonkers, honestly. Like if more games kind of took this like naked approach, I guess you could say,
like a more stripped down approach where it's not just fill the world with nothingness, right? With like pointless stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you're in a forest, so there's going to be a lot of nothingness, but at least it makes sense that there's nothing there. You look at other open world games and there's like just like buildings, but there's no one there. And it's like, why? Like, why isn't there more here?
Right.
This game, it's a forest. It's not like you're going to find crazy shit in the forest everywhere. So at least it makes sense and they kind of play into that better. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. And I don't know. I've been on like an open world streak lately. And that's why the topic for this episode is going to be really interesting because I feel like I have a lot of pros and cons of why I like open world stuff.
Right. So
what's your take on open world?
I mean, personally, it's tough. I mean, I'm torn between the open world, honestly, because as much as I really enjoy the aspect of being able to do anything I want in a game, that promise is never really fulfilled, right? So I like the concept of open world games because player expectation, we went over this in our last episode as well, where, player expectation of an open world game is much different than what is actually delivered, right? When someone says, your actions have consequences, like, okay, look at Fable, right? Where that was one of the first ones where they said what you do matters. So if you go into a town and let's say you rob a store, then you are permanently damned from that store, right? But if you just go to the next town, nobody knows. Or let's say in Skyrim, you murder an entire village and then you go somewhere else, you're still a hero. Nobody. So like, do your actions really have consequences? So that's where I'm getting at, where I really enjoy the idea of it. I love roaming around in the fields and like just seeing the scenery. I can get lost in that for hours. But when I come back to the idea of what is promised or what's expected, I feel like I kind of lose it a little bit. And they can get kind of repetitive and boring for me as well. So, I mean, it comes between an open world game and a more linear story-based game, I'm probably going to lean more towards the linear story-based game or the one that has a more direct path to the story. Because that's what I'm playing for, is I'm playing for that escapism. And I feel like there's some really good open world games. So I'm going to say some open world games out there just don't really hit that for me.
Yeah, it's, coming back to how you were saying, like with the choices, I feel like so many games you can do that where you could slaughter a whole town, like in Skyrim, right? You go to the next town and no one bats an eye at you, right? There's no carrier pigeons of what your actions did there going to somewhere else,
Which there totally would be. There's no way that you could get away, right? Like,
yeah, after playing Red Dead Redemption 2, where there's bounties and like you would go to another town, someone recognized you. I was like, whoa, this is kind of the future, right? but then I
Don't they
mean,
clear?
it would go
Yeah,
away
yeah.
eventually anyway. So it's like it was going in the right direction with consequences, but it wasn't hitting it out of the park,
Or like
in my
Grand Theft
opinion.
Auto, right? You get the cops called on you, and then you can just call up Lester and just be like, "Hey, get rid of my stars." So
Yeah.
it's like I get it. Yeah, there are consequences, and you know what? That's not at the fault of the designers because trying to create and develop a world that vast is an impossible task. You just can't. It's too much. Like you can't recreate real life. You can simulate real life, but you can't recreate it. So I always want to remind gamers and everything like that you have to change your perspective on these things. Yes, open world is amazing. Yes, you can do a lot, but you can't do anything. And remember, it's still a game. So just have fun with it, right? Like I think that's the core of it.
Yeah. It's not like we're trying to play like a real life simulation.
If I did that, I would go outside.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah, like otherwise, like you look at The Sims or something, like even there's no consequences for something that feels real like,
Right.
So it's like I feel like if games were too realistic in that sense, like coming back to Grand Theft Auto, you get a 4-star wanted level and you're able to evade the police. It goes away, it clears, right? You're back down to 0. In real life,
You would be on the
you
most
would
wanted list. You would be.
yep. Like they would still be out, like they wouldn't be like actively searching, sending cops on you, but if you were walking down the street, they should give you like a chance, like maybe a 1 in 100 chance, like, oh, you're gonna get spotted, and then it's instant 4-star. The thing is if games did that, you would spend probably most of the game being jumped by police or whoever, like the consequences, right?
Yeah, it
So
wouldn't be fun anymore.
yeah, so I can see the balance, but I feel like a company could do something to balance it even more, to make it where, I mean, I guess you could have a feature where you turn it off. Like they could include a feature like
Like
that,
include
but
realism, and then it just completely wrecks your day.
I mean, it sounds like really cool, but also kind of shitty at the same time. But I think it'd be a lot of fun to just have a mode where for like 2 hours you just play in ultra realistic mode where your choices really do have consequences,
It could be fun, but I mean, I think that kind of takes away from the most important part of gaming and entertainment in general is that escapism. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, what's the point of playing it, right? Like, if you're going to play a game where it's basically real life, right? Like 100% real life, then is that fun? Like, because I mean, maybe you'll just play a character that just sits at home and watches Netflix too, right? Like,
You just play a character that's exactly like
exactly,
you.
because you don't want to get in trouble. You just, or whatever it may be, you're not going to just go out there and do crazy things just to do them because you don't do that now.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, some people do, but yeah.
You don't know me on the weekends. No.
Good point. You do live right next to
Yeah,
Hillcrest.
you never know. But I mean, aside from like the moral and choices, like open world kind of has a lot of other issues that come with it. But you know what? Before we get into that, I kind of want to get into like maybe where open world games kind of started from.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Like we're all accustomed to Grand Theft Auto and Skyrim and even The Witcher, right?
These vast games that have endless possibilities and so many side quests. But that's not where amazing graphics. But that's not where open world started. It has a much humbler beginning.
Maybe if you're 8, it started there, but
8. Well, it depends on which one you're looking at. If you're looking for the first one, then you would be 50 now. That game came out. It came
Yeah.
what 50 years ago?
Yeah. The one, yeah, it did. The one that I'm
Yeah.
looking at. So the first kind of, I guess, it was considered open world was this Sega arcade game called Jet Rocket. And there doesn't seem like there's really many working in the world. From what I was reading, there's only one.
Oh wow.
And it's in the like a Finnish museum or somewhere in Northern Europe. This thing's a beast. Like, if you have free time, anybody listening, like, just Google Jet Rocket arcade game, arcade cabinet. This thing's so interesting because inside the cabinet is this like cloth map that is on wheels, and it basically has this map that rotates. So when you're playing the game, obviously the game shows in a dark light, so you don't see like how the map actually looks, but you see the shapes of the buildings and the landscape that are like in the map. And it looks like you're flying over this city or world at night. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of crazy. I mean, the video footage of these, it's like 10 years old. So, I mean, camera phones didn't look that great back then. But you get the point, and it's like, whoa, like, you were able to fly around what seemed like an endless space because it's just a map on wheels. But it's crazy, like, to have that idea. And, I mean, this game kind of, if you think about it, really started flight simulation with games. It opened up a whole lot of things. It was a shooter too, so it really felt like it was an endless map. You know, so many games in the mid 70s, early 80s, when you would reach the edge of a screen, it would load up a whole nother screen. It didn't really feel like you were endlessly going. And this arcade cabinet basically made it seem like it was endless, and it's wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, for the 70s, that seemed like kind of the big deal. Well, it wasn't a super big deal, but it was. I think 80s is where open world kind of took off.
I'd agree.
Did you find any? Because I got a couple here.
I mean, the first one that obviously sticks out to mind is the Ultima series for me, right? That's like the big one there as far as original open world games. And I just kind of want to touch bases on the idea of the definition of open world was different when these games first came out, right? Open world really just meant non-linear, where a player had different choices to get to the same, or to get to the goal, right? Where instead of going down the dungeon, you can go talk to the bartender and he lets you in the back door, right? To get the key or whatever it may be, right? There's branching paths to achieve your goal. Now, when we think open world, we think sandbox. And if it's not sandbox, then it doesn't count for a lot of people for some reason. But really, that's the biggest concept that I think is important to kind of drill down on, is the fact that the original idea of open world was non-linear branching path. That's an open world. Different choices to get to your goal. And I think Ultima really showed that. And I would love to play that game now just to kind of pay homage to it, right? But at the same time, it's hard to watch.
Oh, yeah.
But the work they put into that, like it was 2 developers, and it took them only a year to build this thing, and it changed the landscape of games forever.
Only it was 2? Oh,
the first Ultima was just 2 people, and it took them 1 year to make it.
Wow,
just 1. And now look at it. Aren't they still making Ultima games? Like
they are, but I mean, their influence is what influenced Dragon Quest. Right. So I mean, like they're
everywhere.
Yeah, they inspired almost every modern RPG.
Yeah,
which is wild.
There was the other one before. Oh, Wizardry. That's another one.
Yeah, they're kind of the same thing. I think Wizardry is more dungeon crawler, if I remember
but they
right.
still consider that one kind of open world because you can take branching paths to get to the end goal.
Oh, yeah.
But if you think like a lot of people might not be able to imagine the world of Wizardry, right? But we say dungeon crawler, but if you think like Doom, but slower, I guess, right? Because it's that same idea where you're walking down hallways and corridors and then you run into monsters but for Wizardry, it turns into a full like text battle where you just see numbers and what's going on the screen, but it's really hard to tell what's actually going on.
Yeah.
It's easy to die in that and not even know that you died. That's for sure. But it's a very interesting title. And it's crazy to see like what was made 40 years ago, and in this short amount of time, look where we are now. Like that's relatively short.
It's crazy.
Something, right? Like it's not that long ago. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, like you were saying, Ultima. Like just imagine, like when that came out. You know, I would say probably even just 10 years later. Like look at how RPGs advanced since then. I mean, in the beginning, they were almost all dungeon crawlers. So to throw an overworld on it, it's crazy. I mean, I was looking at like Highlight and, you know, Dragon Quest, where it's like you have a world map, and seeing a world map on these games is crazy because people weren't used to it. You know, you're able to roam this world, you get more immersed in it. And I feel like with RPGs, that overworld was really the first sense of an open world to an extent.
Right.
I think people's first big experience of it, I mean, this you could consider it open world. It is when you look at maps, but like the original Zelda, right, on
There's
the NES.
Definitely an argument to be made that that's open world if you're following the original definition of it, right?
Yeah. And I mean, you look at like how it evolved. Like when you look at A Link to the Past, and it's like, whoa, like that you can actually see the difference. You know, it's more seamless.
Well, you can walk to the final boss in the very beginning, which I love the fact that they brought that back for like Breath of the Wild. You can literally walk to Ganon right at the very beginning.
God, I can't imagine taking them on right in the beginning.
Just a stick. No, thank you.
That'd be such a pain.
Yeah. People have done it, though. They're crazy.
Dude, a little off topic, but right now GDQ is going on. Game's done quick. I watched this guy play Mario 64 blindfolded.
I saw a picture of that. That's ridiculous.
And he did like the 16-star challenge, so he still glitched it, but like this guy was able to get these stars and beat the game blindfolded. Like, think of the muscle memory, man. I'm like, God damn.
Think of all the other things he could have done.
I mean that too, but yeah. Oh God. Anyway, I know that was off topic, but
no, I saw that. It was such a weird
that
thing to see. Yeah.
But yeah, it's, you know, as someone who grew up playing Super Nintendo games and saw the evolution of moving forward to the N64 and PlayStation era, it's crazy how the overworld like structure changed in games, you know, because I think with open world, it really advanced through RPGs until slowly it turned into more sandbox and shooter aspects. But when you look at RPGs of like, you go from Dragon Quest to, I don't know, like Xenogears or like any of like the PlayStation era, like you're able to fly around. It looks more realistic. The worlds are a little bit bigger, so it feels like you're actually moving around them. It's crazy to think that, and this is kind of jumping to Western RPGs. I was watching a video on Daggerfall, right? The second Elder Scrolls game. And the world map is still considered the biggest world map in any game ever made.
That's
Granted, they handmade like a handful of towns in that, dungeons and stuff, and the rest are all like procedurally generated, right? But this map is huge. And this is like how you were saying, there's a lot of empty space. And yeah, at the time, the game was kind of mind blowing because there was this huge world that just felt endless. Like there's probably still parts of the game no one's explored. But it's filled with emptiness for the most part. You know, you're walking on this path and it's just like a tree here, a cave there. Like it's nothing crazy. And I mean, that's when open world really takes the more quantity over quality aspect. And I feel, I don't want to say certain developers focus on these traits more often than others, but you can see how some open world games go from here's a big world with very little in it to a medium-sized world with a ton in it. Like, it's interesting seeing different companies have different takes on open world. I mean, in the 90s, early 2000s, we saw Shenmue, right? Which, that was open world when you think about it. I mean, you're going around town and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
you can do multiple things. Both players will, or you can do things other players that wouldn't do in their normal playthrough, right? Like it, yeah. So that definitely would be.
It felt real.
Right.
And then, you know, Grand Theft Auto really pushed what we knew about open world and really broke the door down with here's freedom. And I remember when GTA 3 came out and I was like, this is super cool. But, you know, I was like too young for it, right? And it's just seeing that, I'm like, wow, like they can do that with games. Like, what if they could do that with other things? And seeing how games like Morrowind or Oblivion to Assassin's Creed, like seeing different games try different techniques, it makes me really wish that all these companies could just come together and make like one super open world game with all their different ideas, you know?
That'd be nice. But that takes a lot of cooperation between multiple companies. So.
Oh yeah, that'll never happen. But
because who has the rights at that point?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Were there any like open world games that were kind of like influential to you, or any that you really liked?
Influential open world games.
Or that you felt really lost in the world. Let's put it that way. Like you actually enjoyed exploring.
I mean, honestly, I always go back to this game, but Shadow of the Colossus is definitely, I would consider that open world because you can just cruise. I mean, yeah, there's the main quest and everything, but I just love the scenery of it. And I have used and recreated a lot of the different bits of scenery and imagery in that game for like student projects that I was doing just to get some practice because it's just so iconic to me. Basically anything done by Team Ico, I absolutely love it just because of the design process and that appreciation of that aspect of it. But I think, I mean, GTA was a huge one for me. I played GTA 3 in Miami Vice a lot. Like a lot, like way too much when I was younger. But now it's funny, like I don't want to play GTA 5 at all. But, I think I burned myself out when I was a kid. But I would consider those like, you know, like that's a sandbox game. I wouldn't, like, yes, it's open world, but I think those two terminologies need to be separated. Like we have sandbox games and then we have open world games. And I think those two need to be, like, they're their own things. Like GTA is a sandbox game. You're on an island. Do whatever the hell you want. Have fun, right? Whereas, like, you look at, I don't know, like Dragon Quest 8. I'm just picking a random number because why not? They all have this concept to them where you can cruise around the map as much as you want. I can go farm things wherever I want. I can go attack any monsters I want. I can just roam, the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's still an overarching story going on that needs to get
Yeah.
done. It needs to be dealt with, and you need to handle it. And to me, that's more open world game. That's what I would consider one. So, I mean, one that kind of really stands out to me because I wish I actually enjoyed it more during my first playthrough, which I didn't actually finish this game, but Fallout 4. It has such a great, like, people love this game, and I get it. I get it. It's a good game. There's a lot in there, but I fell into the trap of there was too much crap going on that took away from the story. And then when I finally decided to go back to a story mission, I was like, wait, what's going on? I like I completely forgot what the actual story was, and I was like, well, I don't really care anymore. So I just was like, nope. And I ended up returning that game too, because I was just like, I can't. I'm just not going to play this anymore because I don't want to start over. I already put like 10 hours into it. I did a bunch of side quests, and I don't even know where I am or where I'm supposed to go or who I'm supposed to talk to or what was the point.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of open world games will fall into that aspect where side quests really take over after a certain point. Like, I think Cyberpunk really focused on that and honed in on it because, I mean, yeah, the story missions are there, but I mean, you're all over the map. It's littered with side gigs. And I mean, some of it's kind of the same thing, like find this one person or it's a bounty, but then there's like the special side missions. But most of the game is side
Well,
missions.
that's actually a thing from that developer, CD Projekt Red. They have
Yeah,
an entire division just dedicated to side missions. Like
that's
they have a
wild.
whole development crew on just side missions and side quests. That's it. Like they don't focus on the main story. When they have a main game going, then they port or switch up the side quests for those games, right? For whatever game's being made currently. But yeah, they have an entire development team just for side quests and balancing those. So it's not actually the main development team of the game. It's an entirely different team. So that's how they fill it because they have people constantly making these things and then they just dump it in their games to fill the world and make it seem like there's a lot more to do than there really is.
Yeah, it felt like it was adding a lot of life. And I mean, granted, a lot of these side missions felt better than the main story, but I'm just like, I wanted more from the story because I feel like the story actually impacts things. And that's the thing with side missions is a lot of times in games, it doesn't feel like they do anything. Like they don't add to the story. Like sometimes, like maybe like in Fallout, a side mission will play like a little minor thing at the end of the game, you know, when the credits roll and it's like, here's what happened after the game ended. You know, sometimes you'll see like what you did as a side quest ending up on the end screen, but most games they don't. And it's like, why am I doing these? Like for experience, like cool, but it just feels meaningless sometimes. And a lot of games fall into that trap. And coming back to Fallout 4, I mean, I beat it. I spent a lot of time with it, but would I go back to it? No. I felt like 3 and New Vegas had that perfect balance of open world, but not getting really lost and turned around. Like you were able to do your side missions, but still focus on the story. Whereas 4 felt big. You could get stuck exploring and then 10 hours later you're going to do a story mission. You're like, oh yeah, what was I doing? Yeah. Like it feels weird, you know? And then, I mean, like for me, when I think about a fun open world, I look at Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I know I'm coming back to Ubisoft, and normally I dislike how they do their take on open world, right? Hundreds of stupid collectibles. You know, you have your vantage points and you have to climb up and it shows the whole area.
It's just a fetch quest. Like that's all those games are.
Yeah, but the world, like an Odyssey, like being able to sail, it felt like my favorite thing from Wind Waker. was thrown into a beautiful game, and it was really I really enjoyed exploring in that
I
game.
totally forgot about Wind
And
Waker. That's my answer right there. I just take back everything I said the last 5 minutes. Wind Waker is the one that like I just sailed for hours and just got lost and
same.
tried looking for just random bits of treasure in the oceans and stuff. Like that was an amazing title for like the idea of an open world or like being able to do anything you really want to at that point. But
Oh
it's
yeah.
still,
It felt like you were actually
yeah, you were
exploring.
still exploring, but you still felt the need to come back and complete the story, right? They
Yep.
did something really smart with that where they put they put just enough like side things in there to keep you captivated and give you something to do, but they never failed to remind you of what needs to be done. And it didn't feel like they were just like dragging you by the leash to pull you back. It felt like you wanted to go back. So I don't know. That's a really good formula for what I would consider an open world game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even comparing it to other Zelda titles where it's like I feel like with Wind Waker you had that. It really felt like an open world that you were fully exploring. You know, you look at Ocarina of Time, you look at I'm trying to exclude Breath of the Wild from this, but like the older ones, it never felt like you were exploring like a grand area, like a huge
Right.
place. Maybe it's because sailing you're mostly seeing emptiness, and then when something pops up you're like, "Oh my god, this is cool." But for me it worked. I was blown away when I played it. I'm like, "Wow, this is crazy." Like I wish more games did
Yeah.
this. And surprisingly, you didn't see games like that too often. That's why when I played Odyssey, I'm like, I love this. Like it felt good. And yeah, Odyssey had a lot of the things bad about open world games it had, but it did have a strong story and it all did kind of combine together. But I'm just thinking about the sour taste all the old Assassin's Creed left, and I'm like, oh, I can't.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So I mean, we've touched on quite a few things that open world games can do like wrong or right. Like they, I,
Mm-hmm.
I just really want to touch back on one of the ones I feel is the most important, and it's pacing, right?
Oh yeah.
Because it's just, I mean, we've kind of like touched on this where like getting lost in the side quests and you're not like remembering what to do and as far as the game goes. But when you originally watch these game trailers, you're not watching trailers of side quests. You're buying these games for this story that they actually have portrayed to you, right? So like whenever a game takes something out or like takes a player out of the main quest, it's a distraction and then you lose that story, you lose that game, you lose the original meaning behind it all, and you lose that original like intent of the player to actually play this game.
Yeah. Uh I hate to come back to it, but Cyberpunk's a good example because I mean, when Johnny Silverhands, like, this isn't spoilers. A lot of people like it's known that the whole Keanu Reeves thing is like he's in you, right? Like he's taking over your brain or
Mhm.
whatever, and the story makes it seem like you're in a rush to try and fix this problem, but here I am doing 20 hours of side quests, and I don't feel like it's making any
Yeah,
difference
there's no repercussion. Yeah.
to yeah, so it's like the pacing, but as soon as I do a story mission it's like, oh my god, like you're losing it. It's like, so what happened the last like 20 hours? Nothing.
Right.
Like the pacing just feels so weird, and I feel like finding an open world game that has pacing done right is like finding a needle in a haystack. I don't think I've really seen
I
it
can't
yet.
really think of one, right? Like even let's say like Final Fantasy 15 fell into that same trope where there's like an impending doom and like, oh my gosh, there's a war going on, you have to fight these guys. But I always found myself like, oh, hang on, I'll be back in like 10 hours. I'm just gonna go level up and then I'll go deal with this. right? Like it pacing and open world does not go hand in hand currently.
I mean, looking at it now, maybe the closest would be Ghost of Tsushima because the side missions are kind of more mellow.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I'm gonna go and sit on a rock and do a haiku. Like I could see that, like, oh, you needing a little zen break, and like it's not like you have 50 things to do in between your missions. Like there's just a couple, maybe 5 or 6, and then you get on to your next one, and they're all kind of in close proximity.
Right.
I feel like maybe that game was the closest to having good pacing.
That's definitely one that I'd have to
But
check out. I have not finished a playthrough of that one yet, unfortunately.
yeah, I don't know. I find it weird when you play a game and say they'll like call like, oh my God, there's an emergency here. Like they're coming in, like you need to be here. So it's like, okay, I need to drive there right now. But instead I'm gonna go help this dude on the corner find his
Right.
like cat. So it's like I'm gonna come back right after that, and the person's still there somehow, still surviving, waiting for you to
Right.
get there. It's like
They're like hunkered
what?
down at gunpoint. Help, I need your help. And then you're like, all right, cool, I'll be there. But let me go, like, like you said, let me go find this cat real quick. Oh, and this baker really
Yeah,
needs help with the delivery. So I'm going to go do this. You're cool, right? like they need to have like I guess, like there
a
needs to
backup.
be like repercussions for that or something to urge the player to go there. Like, because there has to be lulls in the action, right? Like there has to be
Mm-hmm.
down moments because that's just real life. If open world is to emulate real life fully, right? You would have moments of action like where you have to answer the call, you have to go do this, but then there could be like prep time. And in the prep time, that's whenever you do your side quests and things like that. Now, would
Yep.
everyone consider that a fully open world game? I don't know. Because you have the option to do things, but when the story calls, you go. Right? So it's like linear, but not.
I think it'd be still open world because I mean, it's not like every mission would have you on like a linear path. Say maybe out of the 30 missions a game would have, maybe 6 of those would be
Mhm.
linear like that. That means the rest of them you're pretty much open to do whatever the hell you want. And I mean, it'd be cool, say, like coming back to that situation where you end up taking a side mission and the person on the call either gets kidnapped or killed. It's like the mission didn't fail. It's just the mission objective changes where it's like go to where the call was received or do research like where was the person last seen and then uncover what
Now you need to
happened.
go find them because
Like,
you didn't rescue them at that time, right? Or something like that.
yep. Like it'd be really cool if games did that, and I think it would add a lot to a game, but I also feel like it's something that it wouldn't be difficult to
It
implement,
wouldn't be, but I
but
think the main issue behind that is money and time, right? So
yeah, the
you're
crunch.
exactly like if you have to code in all these possibilities that most gamers won't see, then you run into like a pretty big issue there, right? But I guess that's
Yeah.
the same. Well, you know what? Never mind, because that kind of goes with side quests. Because you can choose to do side quests if you want and see those outcomes play out, but they don't affect the game, like the main game. So I guess it is still different on that aspect. Like we need something that affects the main game, affects your player, affects how you go through the world, but is still optional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. That still feels like a lot.
I feel like if someone did that, like a big company, like it would be like a game
Oh yeah.
changer.
That would be the like the game of that would be talked about forever. That would be the next like Ultima series that's talked about 50 years from now or whatever.
Yeah, it would be innovative enough where I could see other companies trying to do
Right.
the same. And I know a lot of companies try to avoid timed things nowadays because it seems like people don't like timed stuff. And I mean, honestly, I don't either. But if me missing it does such a big change like that, I wouldn't mind it because it'd be cool to see a different outcome. And these outcomes wouldn't have to be where it changes the story completely. It would just make it so an alternate
Right.
route
So it wouldn't
happens.
theoretically, it wouldn't really be like a timed event, right? There's a certain time to
Mhm.
complete this route, but then if you don't do it, then there's a different route to go through, right? So it's timed in a sense, but still gives you options. So it allows
Yeah.
the player to do what they want and just go around and cruise and do side quests if they want, but at the same time, and get to the same final conclusion with like meaning to their choices. So, yeah. But that's a hard one. That's hard. It's definitely a difficult concept to go across.
Closing off, I think the end here, I wanted to ask you, I figured this would be kind of cool to start doing this, but what are you hoping to maybe play soon or get into in the coming week, or any shows you plan on watching? Like, what are you hoping to achieve until, say, like the next episode?
So I have 3 right now. Yeah,
Ooh,
I do.
3.
It's funny that you asked this because I was just thinking about this morning, because I've been trying to, I
read minds.
And I swear we didn't talk about this beforehand, audience. I know you think, oh, they're recording a podcast. They talked about this. And nope, not this time. But I've been really trying to make lists and lay out all the things that I want to do, because the amount of things on my plate have kind of grown a lot lately, right? But as far as fun things for me, like to keep me sane, so it's not just all about work and that grind. Number 1, Promise Neverland season 2 is now getting released. Episode 1 is out right now. Yep, exactly.
Shit.
It's on Hulu right now. I saw that yesterday while I was watching. I don't fucking remember what I was watching, but it's probably like 90 Day Fiance or some bullshit. But
oh my god,
I love garbage TV. Like, to be honest,
it's good in little small
doses.
But
I saw the screenshot come up. And I was like, oh, weird. Like, I wonder why this is coming up again. So I just clicked it. Season 2, episode 1 is available right now, which is at the point where we're recording this. By the time this comes out, maybe episode 2 is probably going to be available. But yeah, so that's exciting. The other thing that I want to do is I want to keep plugging away and really make sure that I complete my monthly challenge for myself, my drawing challenge of Monstanuary. And just, I'm going strong. I've kind of run into the problem where I'm drawing the images the day that they're supposed to be done. So when I first started, I had some like kind of piled up in the backlog. I had about 5 days worth, and I thought I could kind of stay ahead that way so that I can make sure that I actually complete this. That didn't really work out. So the last 3 days have been like literally I get home from work, I draw, and then I post it. And it's kind of fun though, because it's like, I really like, I'm surprised by the quality that I'm able to produce right now. Thank you.
They look really good.
It's really pushing me because I haven't sat there and like drawn in a long time. So it's really getting me back into that medium, that format, and like really getting used to drawing on a daily basis again. And it's something I really missed in my life. Now, the final thing that I really want to make sure that I get into is I want to start playing Minecraft instead of just watching it, right?
Boy.
Like, and yes, we have a purpose for this, and it can be considered work related because we are potentially we're trying to set up videos for playthroughs and things like that, right? But it's just watching it, like we mentioned, it's just like full meditation zen moment. And talk about open world games. There you go. Minecraft is ultimate sandbox. Do whatever the hell you want. Like there's end game stuff, but it's do whatever, right? And it's actually fun.
Yeah.
And the mod packs that people are creating now are just so insane. I want to get into it. And for just my mental state, I want to make sure that I'm constantly stimulating my mind with other things outside of work, because I did that for way too long and I was very miserable. And while I'm still at the same workplace, I'm able to deal with the situations a lot easier, because I know when I go home, I have something to look forward to. So,
yeah,
I'm just trying to fill my day with those things. I'm just trying to stay positive. It's hard. It's super hard right now because we've been going through this pandemic for almost a year now. It's crazy. And I know it's really hard to stay positive out there, but filling your day with little tiny snippets of like joy like that, and it doesn't have to be huge things. Like I'm just doing like simple drawings or looking into playing a video game for a couple hours a day, or right, or just watching an anime or an episode of a show that I really enjoy. Like really setting yourself up for a moment of happiness that way is the best way to tackle or deal with some of the stressors of our everyday life. It's a good distraction. So
yeah, it's a healthy distraction.
So that's my little things for the week. But now that you've asked me, I'm curious because you've had more time to think about this. What's yours?
Oh, so much time. Well, I mean, now I have to add Promised Neverland to my
if you guys
list,
have not seen that show, watch it, please.
I think it's one of the better animes to come out in recent years for sure. At first, it seems kind of, I don't know, not kiddie, but it just seems like, what is this? But then it really picks up. For this, I mean, Minecraft is one to play a bit more of, but actually sit down and play through the stories. I mean, like I want to play through Days Gone some more, but I was thinking for this year, kind of like how I had the 40-40 or the 2020 last year with the 40 games. I realize there's a lot of games that I've been really wanting to play that I put off, right? And there's a lot of retro ones, Xenogears, some of the Breath of Fires, and some of the big name ones, Vagrant Story, all that. Like I've always wanted to play, but there's a few big name indie titles that I have not beaten. I've played most of them, but I haven't beaten any of them, and I want to complete all of them this year. For me, like the big name ones I really want to like finish, Cuphead, which I think that'd be fun. We could play it together. The Bloodstain game would be cool.
That one looks cool.
Games.
I forgot about that game.
Yeah, I keep seeing it brought up, and I guess it just got a new patch where they added more stuff to it. So I'm like, oh, this would be kind of fun to play. I want to beat Shovel Knight. I've only played like a little bit of it, and I really loved it, but then I just
now when you say beat Shovel Knight, do you mean main game is just Shovel Knight, or are you gonna play through all the add-ons as well, where you can be like Plague Knight, the King, and all that too?
I'll probably play all of it.
Yeah,
because I like it, and I'm a sucker like that. I want to see what A Hat in Time is all about.
Oh, yeah.
I know people praise it, and it's just another platformer, but from what I've seen, it looks really cute, and I have it, so I figured
here's the question. Do you like Banjo-Kazooie? Do you like Spyro?
Yeah.
Well, then...
Yeah.
There you go. You'll like it.
Yeah, exactly. But the biggest shame that I really want to play, and...
Ooh, shame.
For years, I only played indie games. There was a point in my life where, like, when I was getting into PC gaming, right, I would say I was into it before in the early 2000s, but I would say maybe 2013 I started really getting into it, and my biggest jump were into indie titles. I played a lot of them, but the one big one that I have not beaten, and I've only gotten maybe 2 hours into Hollow Knight.
Oh my god, same.
I've been wanting to play it so bad, and I loved it. Like, I loved the little bit that I've played of it, but I never got to experience it fully. And I always see people putting it in their top 10 lists, like, always.
The artwork's amazing, the music's amazing, and I'm in the same boat as you. I own that game on 3 different systems, and I have not beaten it. But I keep buying it because I'm like, okay, yeah, like I'll get it on my PlayStation because I'm playing that a lot right now, and I'll definitely play it. Or it's like, oh, let me get it on Steam because it's on sale. Like, that'll give me a reason to play. Let me get it on the Switch because it's handheld, and I could, yeah, no.
Yeah, that's one. Real quick, I've been really interested in like boomer shooters, so like, you know, like old Doom-esque kind of games. So I keep getting recommended Dusk and Ultra Kill.
Not familiar with those.
So I want to check those out. I've heard a lot of praise for Dusk. Like, people are saying it's one of the best shooters in a long time, and I don't know. I've been in the urge for games like that, which is weird because I'm usually not into games like that so much anymore. But I think it'd be fun. But I have a huge list of a lot of these big name games that I want to play through, and I'm really excited to beat these because a lot of them are pretty short. So I think I'll probably be able to beat another 40 games this year if I really put my mind to it. But I'll create some kind of gimmick to all these games and try to make it fun like I did last year. And then I'll mention it again on here, what I'm doing. And maybe every episode I'll try and discuss one of them if I can beat one every week.
Oh, yeah,
that'd be really
awesome.
cool. It's going to take all my free time, but I don't mind.
There you go. It's your little bits of joy to distract you from the other real world.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy, like, thinking about, like, how when I get off work, I think about, like, this podcast. I think about, like, videos I'm trying to make. I keep procrastinating. So I have all these backlog of videos that I've made. I just need to finish them. And I'm like, it's giving me little like moments of hope and enjoyment where it gets me through the day. And, you know, like you were saying, it makes things so much easier. And, you know, as soon as you find that passion, that interest in something you love, like it's easy to get through the rest of the crap. And it's nice.
Agreed.
So to finish off the episode, I will start with the big question of the day, and this will be a little bit more open. Get it? Open world.
But
so open world games. Do you like them? Do you hate them? What about them do you like? What about them do you not like? It's a little up to whatever you feel about them. I feel like people have a lot of thoughts on them always, and I'm always curious to see just what people think about them, because it's cool seeing different things in a different light compared to mine, which I feel sometimes I'm a little against them. So it's always cool to see why people really love them or not.
That's a good one. I like that. And if you want to answer that question, which please do, you can join our Discord channel, join in the conversation. We're starting to recommend a few more animes and do things like that as well. There's an art channel up as well too, so that you can share some artwork if you want to, because we love making and creating. So why not have channels dedicated to that? So you can find all that on we have a, Linktree? Yep. We have a Linktree there in our description. And if you just click on that, you can find links to everything that we're on, all of the podcast platforms, as well as the Instagram and Discord. So check it out. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So that's going to do it for us today. Thank you for listening.
Bye. Yeah. Thank you.
Ready? Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.